As rewilding projects proliferate across the country, on the ground you can expect to see a lot more large herbivores. And it's the way in which that these animals interact with the landscape that helps ensure a richer ecosystem. And in today's video I want to go through some of these species and discuss their place in rewilding Britain. But first we should discuss the current state of the British landscape. It's actually not a bad little den, is it? It's quite nice. I didn't build it myself. It's no secret that large herbivores shape the vegetative landscape, a theory otherwise known as grazing ecology, which is the interaction and disturbance between vegetation and the herbivore. When there is the right assemblages of animals to a given area, their effects can be very positive for biodiversity. However, if there are too many, and a bit like the current populations of deer in the UK, this is when adverse effects can take place and the landscape becomes degraded. So in the context of the UK, centuries of livestock farming and the rise of wild populations of deer has meant that our national parks and much of our landscape has become depleted. And this is unacceptable of our national parks. Our national parks really should be the most biodiverse places in the UK, and currently they're not. And these animals which we're going to talk about in this video today, they are going to play a key role in rewilding our national parks and our landscape over the coming decades. But before they can have their influence, it's essential that intensive livestock farming stops. There's no reason why farmers can't switch to the animals we'll mention in this video and produce local meat from them. It'll actually be essential that the populations of these herbivores are managed, one way or another. But fundamentally, we have to leave large areas of land to naturally regenerate, and in some areas, plant native trees to restore woodlands. These are the large brushstrokes which are needed to paint a wilder setting for our national parks. And then we can apply the finer strokes, which will be the herbivores and their predators. However, there are currently areas within them and across estates and smaller farms that are and would certainly benefit from grazing herbivores. By now I'm sure you all know about Knepp Estate and how they transformed their previously unproductive farm to a much wilder and richer farm, and at the heart of that was grazing ecology. So using Knepp and other sites as a case study to show that these animals actually can benefit our natural environment, let's go through and meet some of them. And in no particular order, let's get started with the pigs. This includes wild boar and also Tamworth pigs and other species. Fundamentally, they create disturbance throughout the soils, rooting and turning clods of earth in search of acorns, roots, shoots, and just about anything else that tickles their taste buds. But seriously, their rooting frees up compacted areas and allows for increased nutrient cycling within the soils. It allows for pioneer species such as willow to grow, and at Knepp, this has been the main food source of purple emperor butterflies. They've also noted that this rooting behaviour has encouraged anthills and solitary bees who quickly colonise these areas. Numerous of the plants are able to spring to life once the soil has been rooted. The mighty European bison. Now this is a creature which is going to be reintroduced to Kent next year within an enclosure, but the aim is to showcase the good this animal can have for the environment. Bison are Europe's largest land mammal. This, coupled with their herd behaviour, can stimulate the growth of vegetation. They're also known for debarking trees, which opens woodlands, an awesome species that very nearly didn't make it. It was only thanks to a Polish zoo that ensured their survival. Exmoor ponies are a species which are admired for their hardiness and their ability to facilitate other grazers, but due to stresses during the Second World War, they almost didn't make it, and they are still to this day considered endangered. Their hardiness is owed to their large hearts, lungs, and weather-resistant coats. They favour eating the coarser and more fibrous grasses, which facilitates the growth of shorter grasses, which cattle favour. Trampling and seed dispersal through dung helps to create more complexity within the landscape. We have to talk about the awesome elk. Although extinct in Britain, they were once native. Their all-year disturbance maintains open areas as well as facilitating shoot growth on trees. They have a love for the water and its lush vegetation, but if we're to see these mighty creatures in the UK, we must create more woodland and wetland areas. And we just couldn't make a video about herbivores rewilding Britain without mentioning the beaver. Now, we've been making a lot of content recently on beavers, so you know all about them. They are the very definition of ecosystem engineers, and over the coming decades they'll play a pivotal role in rewilding Britain. In a previous video we looked at the grazing ecology of cattle, specifically longhorn cattle. They'll take the place of the now extinct auroch, using their horns to pull down branches, their tongues to wrap around and tear grasses, while their dung disperses seeds and supports highly specialised insects and fungi. Now there's also 3 species of deer which we should certainly cover. First we have red deer, which is the UK's largest deer, and they both graze and browse. The difference being the associated height of vegetation, in that grazing is typically associated with ground vegetation and browsing includes the nibbling of tree branches. Given that red deer do both, they are considered major shapers of ground flora and woodland structure. However, although found across much of the UK, they are now largely confined to the treeless moorlands further north, and although they've declined, they've been able to adapt to these treeless environments. And in many ways, with no natural predators, they are now preventing the growth of trees, which would ultimately benefit them. Fallow and red deer are the other two species you'll find within the UK, and when not too abundant, they're considered valuable, sculpting and diversifying vegetation. But that's the important thing about grazing herbivores. They are only beneficial to a landscape when they are regulated. For centuries, these populations have been managed by man. We have no natural predators that are capable of taking down large herbivores. For good or bad, this has resulted in places like Knepp springing to life, where these herbivores are regulated by man, but we can also see the good that's being done by the herbivores. I just wonder how long it will be until we can see an enclosed area with true predator and prey relationships, because predators really will be, or they are, the missing link in our ecosystems. But until that time, we have a lot of work to do in preparing the landscape for them. I like to say that you can now support Leave Curious over on Patreon. You'll not only gain early access to videos, but also exclusive content. Becoming a patron will help me put more time into creating these videos. I understand that you may not be able to commit to this every month, so instead, it would be awesome if you could like, comment and subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Leave Curious.